Okay, sorry, we've just started annotating 1984 for a little bit, and I'm just filming this for the couple of students who are absent. So, chapter 2, we're just doing a little bit of modelling about the kind of things we might want to look at. So it was an inconceivably stupid thing to do, but what he's not wanted to do is damage this creamy paper. So we know that things from the past have a value for Winston. He drew in his breath and opened the door. Instantly, a warm wave of relief flowed through him. A colourless, crushed-looking woman with wispy hair and a lined face was standing outside. Right, so this is his neighbour, colourless and crushed-looking. This is what happens to the citizens of Oceania. "Oh, comrade," she began, comrade. "Right, interesting. Do you think you could come across and have a look at our kitchen sink? It's got blocked up and..." It was Mrs. Parsons, the wife of a neighbour on the same floor. Mrs. was a word somewhat discountenanced by the party. You were supposed to call everyone comrade. And that is completely true of Russia at this time. And it's also true of North Korea. She was a woman of about 30, but looking much older. One had the impression that there was dust in the creases of her face. Do you remember, I think I said to you last week that word dust comes up so many times in this novel. We've had it in the opening chapter when he's entering Victory Mansions. Emphasis on that for your retrieval practice earlier. But look at her, she's only 30 and already life is ageing her. She is crushed looking and colourless. These amateur repair jobs were an almost daily irritation. Victory Mansions were old flats. So there, we talked about the irony, didn't we, of them being called Victory Mansions. Built in 1930 or thereabouts, so they were over 50 years old, and were falling to pieces. The plaster flaked constantly from ceilings and walls. The pipes burst in every hard frost. The roof leaked whenever there was snow. The heating system was usually running at half steam when it was not closed down altogether from motives of economy. This will be us by the spring with these fuel prices rocketing. We'll all be sitting in here in our balaclavas and woolen gloves. Don't worry, the love of literature will burn through us and keep us warm. Want it, Mimi? Repairs, except what you could do for yourself, had to be sanctioned by remote committees, which were liable to hold up even the mending of a window pane for 2 years. So that's telling me something about the kind of bureaucracy under which these people are living. Everything's got to go through a committee. Did anybody recently watch the TV series Chernobyl? Anybody? Yeah? One of the most frustrating things about that was this revelation of how you couldn't just act quickly in Russia at the time, because everything had to be passed through a committee. Everything had to be sanctioned, and those delays cost hundreds of lives, didn't they? People were scared to make decisions. If you haven't watched Chernobyl, is it on Prime? Because it was on BBC?
It was Sky originally, then it came on to Prime or Netflix or something.
Right. Well, I thoroughly recommend it for you getting a flavour of what life was like in Russia. And also, I've recommended this film before, I think, The Death of Stalin. And that just shows you how this bureaucracy, this red tape, ties things up and slows things down. Okay. Now, then what we get is a description of the room that's full of children's stuff, exercise books. On the walls were scarlet banners of the Youth League and the Spies. The Youth League and the Spies. Who knows anything about Nazi Germany? What's this reminding you of? The Hitler Youth. Excellent. So, I'm putting another AO3 comment there. And for those who haven't done GCSE history, the Hitler Youth was...
Scouts, so it's just conditioning children.
Right. Yeah, fascist version of the Scouts is a good way of putting it, so that you could indoctrinate children from an early age to serve the country and the Führer first and foremost. And this is another sign of often a dystopia under a dictatorship, that they want the citizens to have allegiance to the figurehead rather than family, so that they come first. It's the children, they haven't been out today, and of course, she had a habit of breaking off her sentences in the middle. The kitchen sink was full nearly to the brim with filthy greenish water, which smelt worse than ever of cabbage. He's got a thing about that cabbage smell, hasn't he? So I'm trying to keep it flat for you. Of course, if Tom was home, he'd put it right in a moment. He loves anything like that. So who's Tom? Right. Tom Parsons, was Winston's fellow employee at the Ministry of Truth. And here I think is one of my favourite descriptions of a character in literature ever. He was a fattish but active man of paralysing stupidity. Fattish but active, paralysing stupidity, a mass of imbecile enthusiasms. One of those completely unquestioning, devoted drudges on whom, even more than the thought police, the stability of the party depended. So I'm underlining that because this is telling me something else about the citizens. There we get Mrs. Parsons. She's beaten down. She's got dust in the creases of her face. She's only 30, but she looks much older. So citizens of Oceania can be beaten down, or they can be paralysingly stupid and go along mindlessly with everything that the regime wants. At 35, he had just been unwillingly evicted from the Youth League. And before graduating into the Youth League, he had managed to stay on in the Spies for a year beyond the statutory age. This is a man who is committed to serving the regime. So I'm going to put something like that. Parsons committed to serving regime. Right. Who's read ahead and knows what happens to Parsons? Anyone? Okay. What do you think might happen to him from this? Right, and what I'm going to do now is that enough just to start you off with the kind of little things that I'm looking for? It's that careful reading. So you've read it through once to get the gist. And I was just talking to my colleagues in the office there and prepping for this lesson and saying, you know, like I had my, 5 or 10 minutes. I've read this book easily a dozen times now, easily. I read it first when I was your age. But I'm not going to come into a lesson and not quickly reread it again. So if your teacher who knows this book inside out is quickly reading it again before the lesson, it's a pretty good sign that you should be as well, isn't it? Okay. So, as you know, for each chapter of the book, or a couple of chapters as we start to move on, we've got a few questions that we want to answer, and then I've chosen an extract that I think is important for that chapter. I could have chosen, this isn't the best one or the most important, I just think it's interesting. So if you want to get that extract out or turn to it in your book, Keaton, do you have the 1984 booklet? You need to bring your dystopian folder. That goes in, that goes in, that goes in. Sufel, have you got those? Yeah. Right, just couldn't remember who's been off. Right, have you not got those either, Mimi? Yeah, that's all right. Keep each other right. And you also need then a dystopian folder checklist. You pass that on to Keaton as well, please. Right, okay, so what I'm going to do is, with your input please, go through this extract, and then if you haven't already, give you time to answer some of these questions and just have a bit more of a wider discussion about what's going on in chapter 2. Okay, let's just close that off. There was a trampling of boots and another blast on the comb. So they've put, have you ever done that as a kid? Put paper over a comb and made a little musical instrument of it? You all think I've gone a bit mad, don't you? As the children charged into the living room, Mrs. Parsons brought the spanner. Winston let out the water and disgustedly removed the clot of human hair that had blocked up the pipe. He cleaned his fingers as best he could in the cold water from the tap and went back into the other room. Up with your hands, yelled a savage voice. A handsome, tough-looking boy of 9 had popped up from behind the table and was menacing him with a toy automatic pistol, while his small sister, about 2 years younger, made the same gesture with a fragment of wood. Both of them were dressed in the blue shorts, grey shirts and red neckerchiefs, which were the uniform of the spies. Winston raised his hands above his head, but with an uneasy feeling. So vicious was the boy's demeanour that it was not altogether a game. You're a traitor, yelled the boy. You're a thought criminal. You're a Eurasian spy. I'll shoot you. I'll vaporise you. I'll send you to the salt mines. Suddenly they were both leaping round him, shouting traitor and thought criminal, the little girl imitating her brother in every movement. It was somehow slightly frightening, like the gambolling of tiger cubs, which will soon grow up into man-eaters. There was a sort of calculating ferocity in the boy's eye, a quite evident desire to hit or kick Winston, and a consciousness of being very nearly big enough to do so. It was a good job it was not a real pistol he was holding, Winston thought. Right, lovely. As I was reading that, I could see people starting to highlight and annotate things, underline. Excellent. So, who would like to start me off with any bit of this extract that they'd like to discuss? Genevieve?
It's a bit vague, but it just struck me as interesting that this little girl is imitating her big brother, as in a reflection of everyone following Big Brother.
Yes. So, here it is, the little girl imitating her brother. So what does that tell us about this society? Yeah, go on, I want a bit more than that. Holly, you're on the right lines, Genevieve.
Is this like a microcosm, like society?
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. So, a kind of microcosm of how society is working. A microcosm means like a little world representative of a bigger world. So what is it telling us that this society encourages or condones? Mimi?
Yeah, well, it's condoning violence and it's encouraging it in what we're seeing is Big Brother is relying on the younger generation because the older one, you get them to conform but not become particularly passionate about it. But you can see in the younger, like the boy is very passionate, he wants to he wants to hurt Winston, like he's throwing all these allegations, so when the little boy grows up and he's grown up in this environment, then he will become passionate about saying the ways of the children, and then the society will be like made.
Lovely. That's a really, really well articulated answer. That Big Brother is relying on the younger generation to conform to indoctrination regarding violence. And what else? It's not just violence here, is it? What else do they want them to do? Because he's wanting to hurt Winston, but what else does he want to do? What else does he call him?
A traitor.
A traitor. So what does he want to do, Dan?
He wants to send him away.
Wants to report on him, yeah. So the fact that, so that reporting. Genevieve, did you want to add to that?
I
Sorry.
was just going to say the idea of exposing whoever they can.
Yeah. Are we any further forward guessing what might happen to their dad? Yeah. Hamil.
I was just going to ask what the word after conform to says.
Indoctrination. Should I spell that out a bit clearer? Sorry. Right, we all happy with what indoctrination means? It's a posh word for brainwashing. To be indoctrinated. Right, what else do we want to pull out of this extract then? Millie?
The simile about the time code.
Yes?
Could you say that, like, it's sort of an impact of what society is doing to the little girl as well? Like, she's in that sort of, like, cage of, like, being trapped like an animal in a zoo, sort of.
Oh,
Society, and she can't, like, get out of that stereotype of following everybody else.
so in effect this could be seen as society dehumanising them. That's lovely, Millie. Sorry, I'll try and work on my handwriting being a bit clearer. Genevieve?
To add to that, the boy yells up with your hands in a savage voice, indicating
Yes.
that there's sort of regression of humanity.
Yes.
It's like the opposite of evolution or something.
Lovely. Now, remember, what we're doing here is we're analysing this text, looking for the big themes and ideas. There's no AO2 component to this exam like we do for 12th night, but that doesn't mean that we don't still scrutinise the text to figure out what it's telling us about these dystopian worlds. Keep going then. Let's have something from the back table, or the two far tables. I've got Dan, Quinn and Sarah Lily. And I've got Katie, Layla and Hannah. Anything else that, even if you're not sure what you want to say about it, but you've got that gut feeling that you're like, I bet there's something going on in that quotation, then the rest of the class can help you puzzle it out a bit. Sarah Lily.
It says the boy is handsome and good-looking, and that's how they describe his brother.
Oh, yes. Well spotted. I've never noticed that. Lovely. Go on, Lucy.
It mentions about the fact they're in the uniform of the spies. And earlier on, in chapter 1, there's mention of everyone else being in a uniform.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like an identification in which area they belong.
Lovely. So in this society, uniform is used to help you conform and to shape your identity. Mimi.
That's just reminded me, like, because earlier on, are we allowed to talk about earlier on as well as this?
Absolutely, yeah.
Earlier on when he's watching the video, there's the sheep, isn't it? And like, there's like the different herds of sheep.
Yes, yeah. So in the 2 minutes hate, That idea that they're all just kind of followers, there's no individual identity. Right, great. Go on.
It mentions the fact they're all supposed to call each other Conrad as well.
So that they're not... And there again we see Winston still using the old term Mrs. because he is a product of that older generation. It's going to be significant when he meets Julia because she is a lot younger than him. So she's in between these young spies and Winston's age. How old is Winston? 39. A mere bairn. Right, anything else? Yes, Emily.
So I highlighted charged in the first paragraph, and I kind of thought it was like the idea that it's children are having the idea that they have to have no humanity at all, like they need to just not think but act.
Right.
So, they're trying, in the indoctrination, they're trying to be taught not to think,
Yes.
but to just do their job.
Yes. And we see that. I mean, what else? Look at what else we've got, Emily. That's a really good observation. A trampling of boots and another blast on the comb as the children charged into the living room. It's like a military attack, isn't it? I mean, it's in a microcosm way. But it's definitely an act of regression and violence.
It says as well that it's not altogether a game.
Oh, yes, it does. Where's that?
At the bottom after the vicious with the boys. What was it like?
Oh, yeah. Winston, with an uneasy feeling, so vicious was the boy's demeanour that it was not altogether a game. It's going to tip, isn't it, easily from play into reality. Lovely. I was going to say something then. I hate that. You know when you're going to say something. No, I was going to ask a question. That was it. Why are the kids so frustrated? Why are the kids? Let's have someone who hasn't answered yet. Come on. Why are the kids so frustrated? Katie? What are the kids annoyed about? Where haven't they been allowed to go? Out? Yes. Out where though? Danby, where haven't they been allowed to go? To the hanging. They're annoyed because they haven't been allowed to go out and watch the public hanging. Right? Katie, have you done your reading in advance? Chapter 1, chapter 2 for this week. So let's keep on top of it and then you won't have that horrible knot in your stomach when the teacher asks you a question. Right, lovely. Other Hannah, what's weird about that then?
The two little children shouldn't be acting like they're in a war just because they can't go and watch someone getting involved.
Yeah, I mean it's a big red flag for this society, isn't it? You know, I know what my kids are like when I won't let them out to watch a little bit of casual violence. Kind of pacify them with a McDonald's. Mimi?
They've not only been desensitised by violence, but
That's good.
they've been raised to have it as a form of entertainment and it's a punishment for them if they're not allowed to go wrong.
Lovely. Desensitised to violence and actually encouraged to enjoy it. What does Winston watch at the cinema? Look, I'm looking for non-contributors so far. Layla, what does Winston watch at the cinema? Not Layla, sorry, Lucy, H. Not sure. Have you read ahead? Not in chapter 2, right. So what will you do for next week? And chapter 3 and 4. Good. Layla?
Did we watch a war film?
He does. What happens in that film?
A lot of people died.
Yeah, go on, Becca, tell me a bit more.
Millions of people died and there was explosions.
There were explosions. Yeah, go on. There's a bit more to it than that. Mimi?
The kid's arm gets blown up to
Yeah, the kids, he watches them being gunned, doesn't he? And this little kid's arm gets thrown up. So even when they go to the cinema, they're watching things that are making them become desensitised to killing and to trauma. Right, okay. Excellent work. Has that helped then as a kind of model for the types of things we're looking for as we're reading through? Yeah? And then we've got this video now as well that you can use for revision, I guess. You could come back to this in second year and go, right, what did Julie say about that? Or if you look through your annotations, you go, I'm not quite sure what they mean. So I'll stop that there.